Hello, BookTube. I'm here to talk about the next book in the Strangers and Brothers series by C.P. Snow, and that is 1947's novel The Light and the Dark. This is the second novel he wrote in the series, but it's the fourth novel chronologically, internal story. This time we have crossover a little bit from The Conscience of the Rich. This goes from 1935 to 1943. It's set in Cambridge, and it's mostly to do with his friendship with a young scholar, Roy Calvert. We've seen Roy Calvert already from the Time of Hope when he was a teenager, and he sort of had a crush on another young man and gave a present. It caused a bit of a kerfuffle in the town, and George Passant tried to sort of um, repair any damage, because the young man that was the recipient of this gift got sort of fired and changed his life quite a bit because he was in an apprenticeship. Now, there was nothing untoward with the relationship. It was just an infatuation Roy had. And then he showed up again in The Conscience of the Rich, because in The Conscience of the Rich, Francis Getliff gets Lewis a position at Oxford and Oxford College, an unnamed Oxford College. C.P. Snow does not name the college nor the town. He says London, but that's any smaller places he does not name. So we begin this with Lewis taking up the fellowship as a law professor, professor of law at this Cambridge College, and he's in the same sort of a staircase over from Roy Getliff, and Roy Getliff is a linguist who is specialty is Sogdian language, which is a real language and real uh, uh, civilization that was in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, in sort of northern Iranian area. And he's a brilliant linguist, and he is translating some works of a southern Sogdian language. I don't know the full details of this, but I don't know if there's any difference. But he's translating, and he's working on a liturgy, uh, because Manichaeism, which follows Zoria, sort of it's a religion following sort of Zoroastrianism, and Manichaeism was a massive religion. It actually almost pushed out Christianity, because it was for a while they were running neck and neck for popularity. But anyway, Roy is this brilliant um, linguist, and he's young. He's almost 10 years younger than Lewis. Not quite. I think about maybe 7 or 8 years younger than Lewis. But Lewis, this is the first. Like, Lewis has had friends before. We see in the series, like George Passant, that were sort of confidants. But he sort of moved on from them, and Charles um, March. I couldn't think of his surname. Charles March, and that Conscious of the Rich is about. But he again moves away a little bit, and they weren't intimate friends that knew sort of how he felt and what he believes. The full story behind with his wife Sheila, how he feels about it, and um, the depression that he gets from it, or the stress that's caused from life. um, but also because throughout so far we see that Lewis is the confidant of others, and he gets really close connections with other people, elder people that are older than him, contemporaries, but he does not, sort of is he keeps a lot of stuff close to his chest. But with Roy, there's a real close friendship there, an intimate friendship. And Roy, it feels the same for him. Lewis knows the most about Roy. Roy has depression, and he goes through bouts of depression. Like this is not depression of sort of, feeling sad, or feeling, I'm depressed today, or staying in bed, and then later. This is sort of marrow bone wrenching depression that he has. And like the title, light and the dark, and he has dark periods. And it's not that sort of the dark, like it's as if he's in darkness, but it's not as if, and these are my words here, not sort of, but I think it's apt for the description here. It's as if he's in darkness, but not with monsters or anything, but alone. There is no one else, and not even him, in the darkness. That's how gut wrenching, bone wrenching this depression is for him. But even so, he's a brilliant scholar. He goes through like really, really, dark periods, but he also works really well. And he's sort of, it's been described in the book that he's one one of a generation that is that brilliant. Um, and Lewis really cares for him and helps him as much as he can. And they have long, they talk about a lot of stuff. They talk about, what motivates them, what causes them to, sort of to get up in the morning, like how like, for their life, like what's the purpose of what they're doing, and how it affects them, and how other people affecting them as well. And again, it's very intimate. It's just between the two of those. And Roy is reckless at times. He has a lot of affairs with women, and they sort of think that he's reckless, and he just has one night stands, and he doesn't care for people. He doesn't have any empathy or love for anybody. But the thing is, it's pretty clear for a lot of people that are depressed like this, that if they don't allow other people in for this, they have a lot of love for other people, but they feel that they're going to hurt them, so they in many ways push them away. And Roy pushes a lot of women away, and he has a lot of affairs, through the course of the book. And also he makes like really close friendship with the master of the college, and the master's wife, and the daughter. The daughter actually falls in love with him, and he eventually has an ill-fated relationship with her. But the master's wife is sort of, she almost treats him as if he was a son, and he's the only person that can sort of tease her. She's from a landed gentry family, so she's Lady Muriel. And the throughout the story, and about 1937, the master becomes ill for 6 to 8 months, and dies. And this is a big um, um, blow to Roy and for Lewis. And there's discussion about death a little bit, and it's I find this one of my favorite. It could be my favorite of the books, for a number of reasons. I'll get to that in a moment. There's a lot of personal stuff in here that makes it enjoyable for me. Um, the relationship with Roy, of him being depressed, but brilliant at the same time. I can understand that, with you know and the intimacy that there's only a few people that somebody will let in, and Roy continues, and he goes to Germany in the late, like, 1939, and he obviously gets introduced to Nazism. They kind of try to bring Roy into their fold. He thinks the Jewish aspect is appalling, but he likes um, he's enamored by the efficiency and what the Nazi regime, the Third Reich, could do with efficiency and everything. And he says in one time that, there are, black spots, and they will be forgotten in history. But the whole thing is, it's like, but is it worth it for this kind of thing? And there are discussions around this. And that's another meaning for the light and the dark. There's a lot of layers for this light and the dark. That, the dark is the Nazis, and the light is, anybody against the Nazis, basically. Um, and he actually winds up helping a Jewish family to escape Germany. He tries to get the college to make it so Jewish people are actually Welsh, so they can get them out of Germany, scholars and so forth. Uh, but yeah, and then the war happens, as it does, and he like Lewis goes into the ministry, Whitehall, and he becomes an assistant to a minister, which we will find a lot more about in later books. During this time as well, C.S. Lewis is already sort of spoiled, in a sense, not spoiled, but he gave a foreshadowing that Lewis's wife eventually dies, and we find that out in A Time of Hope. And in here, we know what happens, I think, in 1939. And he is devastated, and it's only Roy that he can talk to about this. But that's left, the details of all this is left out, and about the death of his wife, that's for another novel. And he says that we will, that's not for this story. And as I said, the master dies, and he doesn't go into the details of C.P. Snow. He doesn't go into the details of electing a new master, and that is actually for the next book, which is called The Master, set in Cambridge as well. And Roy is back with this, and the whole cadre of professors or scholars, the fellows at the college. But yeah, like, because it's set in Cambridge. It's I've been to Cambridge quite a bit. I've been to quite a few of the colleges, not as a student, but to, as a touristy type, going through as much as possible. And I love Cambridge, and it's funny because they mention Parker's piece in here many times. It's a great big sort of square, grassy, open space, and that's where the buses from here, from Bedford, stop, and that's where you get off. Now it used to be at the bus station, but they moved it to Parker's Piece in the, I don't know, maybe the last 6-7 years. So that has resonance. Not the last time I read it, I don't think, but it has more resonance now. And then the one woman stays at a hotel that's overlooks Parker's Piece, and I've walked by that hotel many a times. And they even mention Bedford as well here in passing. So there's a lot of things, and the aspect about the depression and that is sort of personal to me as well, because I've known a few people that have had deep depression. and clinical depression. And this is, you remember, in the 1930s. So this is, there is no, or very little. I don't think there was any medication for this. It was a taboo almost subject, and people kept it to themselves. And people did see a little bit of it, but people with depression, a lot of times, like in the way Roy Calvert is, get really expert at hiding it. Um, and it's sort of, there's excuses made by them and for others of their actions and what they do. Um, so that really, to me, rings true for this. Um, and I won't spoil the ending of what happens, but Roy goes into, well, it's, this is now, it's like there's a lot of spoilers, but the spoiler, yeah, like he goes into a ministry as well. He's sort of headhunted for uh, war work because of his linguistic abilities and other abilities, as well as everybody else. Like, so was Lewis. Francis Gatliff for the science um, aspects, and Roy, but he he's had enough of his depression, and he thinks so. Therefore, he's going to go, and he finds out surreptitiously, through discussion with Lewis, what the most dangerous thing to do in the war is, and it's to be a pilot. And this devastates Lewis once he finds out that he purposely becomes a pilot, enrolls as a pilot for this. But before he does this, he wants to get married. He wants to have a child because he's had enough, and he expects to die, in the war, and this is what he wants. But he also fears it. And this is the thing, there's discussions about this, like it's as if, like, he's fearful, he doesn't want to go out on a sortie, and he's afraid of it, but he's also afraid of not going out. Like, there's this conflict there, and he does go missing, and is in 1943, where it ends, where he is dead. He's pronounced dead, missing in action first of all, and then dead. There's no details of that for this, but he does have a daughter. He does have a daughter that that is going to be well taken care of by his friends. Roy Calvert, C.P. Snow sort of modeled Roy Calvert on a friend of his own when he was at university, called Charles Albury, who he was a linguist as well, but not in Sogdian, but in Coptic, Egyptian language, and also sort of early Christianity as well. Who died in 1941 in the war. It's quite controversial, this comparison that has been made, because the family don't like, because they say that Charles Albury was not did not have mental illness, and all sorts of stuff like this. But it's fiction. He's writing fiction. He had a friend that probably, I don't know the full story behind it, but it sounds like it was probably a friend that was an intimate, like Lewis has Roy. So that's what he's used, but then he's embellished a lot more for drama purposes in the story. But also too, that, like I say, there's a lot in the name, the light and the dark, but also too, um, it shows, like, the British public, like in the Conscience of the Rich, we've got the story, but also too it talks about the early 30s and the socialism, and the sort of the dichotomy between the socialism and the rich, and that was starting to happen in the 30s, and it was, and it's shown through the characters, and this is shown through the characters of Nazism, where Roy is enamored by it, but ultimately will, reject it, but considers it. And there was a lot of that happening, because they talk about, like elections for Churchill or for Chamberlain. And there's all this stuff, and it's all sort of what was happening in the 30s and in the early war, made through the eyes of Lewis, but the other characters that are standing in for, the English society as a whole, to a certain extent, because there's not really poor people in here, but a certain sector of English society, and Cambridge, the how Cambridge worked, like it was like the government and Cambridge, like he says in here, are very close together, and they were plucked out of the college to help with the war effort, with specific, positions that they were given, because they were knowing that these people would be good for X, Y, and Z, or whether they were, but they thought they were. And it just, to me, it's so good. I've read a few reviews before, and people, like, contemporary reviews, saying that this book was, tedious, and I don't find it tedious at all. Yes, they ruminate on a lot of things. Lewis is privy to personal information of a lot of people, and he discusses it, and he talks about how they feel towards him and to others. Sometimes he doesn't really make too many judgments, but it's now he's opening up. We get to see, him is he's not all cool, calm, and collected all the time. He has fears. He has insecurities. He has depression to a certain extent. There's a lot of stress that he's going through, and we now see it with the intimacy with Roy. And this is also, it's also a reflection of like British society, I think, as well. But yeah, The Light in the Dark is a fabulous novel, and I think it could be my favorite one out of this. And close second could be The Masters. The Masters was which is the next book to read in May. The Masters was the first one that I've read of the series. I picked it up as a Penguin book, but it's just. But this one definitely has much more personal aspects to me, because I also love the idea of this, Roy in his rooms, just spending, the whole day pretty well, just working, working on his manuscripts, and the cloistered aspect of it that's within the thing, and it's like there's a lot of hypocrisy, because we see that where he speaks out a little bit, but a lot of people allow that to happen because to become, the fellow, and they go along with it. That's not something that I could probably do, but I think in my life, some of my favorite and most contented time was when I was going to university, when everything was going well and working towards a goal for that. And that was so comforting. And every time I read this, the atmosphere of Cambridge, the way this is described, I get that little feel back for it, and wish that I was in a place like Cambridge, in rooms like Roy Calvert or Lewis Eliot, and could, just go for a walk, around Cambridge. It just, so that's why this one is so personal for me on many levels. And yeah, so anyway, I've gone a long time on this, but thank you for if you've made it this far. And I'm looking forward to rereading the Masters next month. And I really want to jump in immediately to it, but I'm trying to hold back. Uh, you know, yeah, they're so good. These books are so good. Thank you, BookTube.